Tell us about some mistakes that you've made even after that. Along the way, and how you learn from those to help continue to grow revenue. Because once you got that first sale, right, now you've got some money coming in the door. Great, let's just repeat this, right? I'm sure that's not always how it goes. So could you give us an example or talk a little bit about how maybe doing the same thing didn't work and how you had to change it up to make it stick?
Yeah, so I guess it's a little bit less of a mistake, but we just did kind of what is like the obvious thing you would expect someone to do, especially with a bootstrap business, which is we needed monthly recurring revenue. So obviously we turned to a membership model and we started rolling out membership across the country, and we were creating basically like leadership chapter groups led by different leaders, and people loved them within our community, so they were more than happy to run them on their own. It was on their own. But what started to happen a little bit was, especially with like the really busy type of leader that we were doing, someone was always raising money or trying to do what they need to do. They could only make so many gatherings, and then it turned into this like mindset of like a gym membership. So we were charging about $500 a year, which for some people is not a lot, but for some people it got a little tight. And for them, they would start looking at it, they'd be a few months in, and then they would cancel and say, hey, I love you, I love everything you're doing, but this isn't fully working. And so we found ourselves spending so much time on these small events, but at the end of the day, what it was also creating, and we ourselves were going down kind of a longer pipeline of, okay, we're doing these events, and we care about them, but what do we actually care about? And what we cared about, as I alluded to, was actually the change makers in these cities who were doing really impactful work for their cities, not just being a connecting piece for leaders to make, raise more money. That's not what I wanted to be in it for, and that's basically what we were doing with our meetups. So it was actually what kept us afloat in the beginning, but we eventually decided to stop doing so many of the local gatherings that we're making some money, but we're expanding way more of our time and put more effort in doing some of these larger gatherings, expanding into content, and just all these other things that we're doing today. And so we really leaned into what our consumer really actually wanted, and at the end of the day, that's led for us to have larger scale corporations and philanthropy that have come in as much bigger partners, which are actually allowing us to build what we're doing.
So really, perhaps counterintuitive to pare back on some revenue strategies you were doing that were generating revenue, but to focus on the core value proposition.
Yeah, it was super scary. It was paying my bills. It wasn't like I was making a ton of money, but it was enough to live in New York City and kind of coast by. So yeah, it was a scary thing to do the one thing that was our consistent revenue, but it gave us that bandwidth to actually start approaching the amount of partners we needed to come in a much bigger path. And now we're actually going back to some smaller, more intimate events in a different way. But now we have the proper partnerships to do it in a way where we can build the team and have the bandwidth to do it appropriately.
Fantastic. So